What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm going to show you what most gardeners get wrong about planting peas so that by the end of this video, you're not most. Let's go. The first thing that a lot of gardeners get wrong about planting peas is not providing adequate trellising. If you have a variety of pea that needs to be trellised, you need to make sure you have a lot of trellising space. We're not talking about a dinky little trellis to give them a tiny bit of support. We're talking about 5 to 6 feet of trellising, because a lot of your trellising varieties of peas will continue to climb. Now, you need to know what you're growing, and before you actually plant your peas, you should know the varieties that you're planting. And so in order to do that, I would highly recommend checking out a video we did on selecting the right peas for your garden. And in that video, we go in depth on picking varieties that are going to need trellising or not, different styles of peas like shelling or snap. You really should know what you're planting first. But once you figure out if you have a trellising variety, adequate trellising is so important. If you don't have enough trellising, what's going to happen is they're going to grow up, they're going to exceed the trellis, and they're going to fall and snap. Or if you provide no trellising at all and they need it, they're going to grow up, they're going to get top heavy, and they're going to flop over in a giant mess. And that's going to result in dead or diseased plants with very little yield. Second mistake a lot of gardeners make when growing peas is not pre-soaking their seeds. It's super important that you pre-soak your seeds if you want good germination. Now, this is not a requirement if you're planting later in the season, but if you're planting early in the season, especially when the soil is cold, that's when peas grow the best. You're going to need to pre-soak your seeds because there's a lot of bacteria and fungi in the soil that as your peas are growing, they're going to want to consume your peas in the soil. Same thing goes for planting things like beans and corn. Pre-soaking those seeds is going to result in a much better germination rate. And so I like to soak my seeds. Now, part 2.5 of this is not soaking them too long. A lot of gardeners do soak their seeds, but then over-soak them. If you over-soak your seeds, they're going to be really low germination rate. So you want to make sure that you soak them for about 4 to 6 hours, and that way they're going to have just enough water to be plump. And they should roughly almost double in size, but they shouldn't be so plump that it looks like they're ready to germinate. They should definitely take on water, and they should certainly get a little bit soft, but they shouldn't be mushy. And so I like to soak my pea seeds for about 4 to 6 hours, and that's great. Make sure you're doing that, especially if you're planting early season. Once your seeds have soaked, the next most important thing you can do that a lot of gardeners do not do, plant your seeds dense. A lot of people really give way too much space to their peas. And what happens is it results in sparse plantings, which results in less yield. Peas don't yield all that much. And one common critique I hear from most gardeners is the reason why I don't grow peas is because they basically are just a garden snack. They never make it indoors because I don't harvest enough. You know, I never get a big bowl full of peas like you see some gardeners get. So I'd rather just go to the farmer's market or the grocery store and buy my peas and not plant them and save this space for something else. The reason why you're not getting a big bowl full of peas is because you're not planting them dense enough. I prefer to plant my peas about 1 inch apart. If you plant your seeds 1 inch apart, it's going to seem crazy dense, but that's what you need if you want good yields. If you're not planting your seeds out close enough, they're going to be very open and you're going to result in suboptimal yields. When they grow up in the trellis, these trellises are spaced kind of far apart. It's okay if it seems like they're kind of trampling each other. Peas will grow pretty densely because they're nitrogen fixing, so they don't really compete for anything down in the soil. And if they're having a fist fight up on your trellis, it doesn't really matter because they don't choke themselves out like other plants would. They can grow really densely on these trellises here, and oftentimes gardeners don't really take that into consideration, and that extra space is just kind of hurting yourself. The fourth mistake most gardeners make when growing peas is not inoculating. Now, in the past we haven't inoculated, but we've recently started inoculating our seeds, legumes specifically, when we plant them. Things like peas and beans can really benefit from an inoculation of mycorrhizal fungi. Now, we do add things like trifecta to our soil, which has mycorrhizal inoculant in it already, but because we don't want to over-fertilize our beans and our peas, I tend to actually just use an inoculant on them, and it works really well. So what we have here is just a sand inoculant, and basically all they do is they take sand, and it's nice and inert, and essentially acts as a medium for the mycorrhizal inoculant to kind of stay dormant in. And then you basically just sprinkle that onto your plants. There's tons of different brands of them. I prefer a brand called Mycos. That's what this is. And essentially Mycos, not a sponsor, we just throw it onto our peas and our beans right when we're planting, and it helps to fix the, basically helps to fix the nitrogen from the soil and the air into the roots of the legumes, and it really helps to increase your yield. So we're gonna throw this on our peas. Now, the common question is, how much inoculant should you be using? I typically, in how much I had in my hand, is how much I would use in about a 4-foot row. About 2 to 3 tablespoons worth is sufficient. Now, depending on the inoculant and how many colony forming units, CFUs there are, you should go for a higher CFU if you want to apply less, or if you have less, you're going to need to apply more, obviously. Myco's has a really good CFU count, so you don't need all that much when you're inoculating your peas. The 5th things that most gardeners don't do when planting peas is choosing the right season. Peas are a cold weather crop, and like I said, and today, I mean, I'm in shorts. It's supposed to be 72 degrees. Technically, we've already kind of missed our window to plant peas, but we did plant some over there. They're already starting to germinate. This was our 2nd planting of peas because we plant in succession, but we're almost out of that window. If it's already 70, 75 degrees, your window to plant peas is slim. Peas do not like this really hot weather. And if you want to get a good harvest, you want to get your pea plants growing and producing well before June. If you go into June or even early July, chances are those pea plants are going to fry. Their stems are really thin, and you're going to find that if they're not up and growing, the stems themselves will really dry out, and you'll end up with really brown bottoms on your pea plants, and they're not going to produce a whole lot up here, even if the tops are alive. But there's one saving grace, and that's if you plant it dense. It's going to help to shade that soil. Also, if you help to mulch the soil with a little bit of mulch, that can help to protect through some of the heat. But regardless, the biggest way to get a bigger yield is simply by planting earlier and getting those plants up and growing. So choose the right season and get your peas started early. You'll thank me later. So this was originally going to be a 5 things I see gardeners not doing to their peas, but then I thought of a 6th, so here's a bonus. 6th thing, I see a lot of gardeners making the mistake of when planting peas, and that's not protecting them from pests. Yes, I hear all the time gardeners say, I can't keep the squirrels out of my peas, or the crows out of my peas, or the mice keep eating my peas. This is a very simple remedy. Simply get yourself some chicken wire or 1/4-inch hardware cloth mesh, run it across your beds. I get some hardware staples. I simply run 2 or 3 staples into the wood of my raised beds. If you're growing in ground, weigh it down with some rocks or some bricks, just long enough for you to start to see sprouts. After that point, most animals, aside from maybe a rabbit or a deer, aren't going to bother them too much. But here in the city, we don't have any deer, thank goodness. Rabbits are really the only thing we contend with, and there's so much forage around that generally they don't really bother our peas all that much. So for us, it's just protecting them just long enough to keep the squirrels, the crows, and the mice from digging them up and pulling them up, and you're going to be fine. So give them some protection. You'll thank me later. So those are the 6 things I see a lot of gardeners, most gardeners, not doing to their peas. If you were one of those gardeners, let me know in the comments box down below. I'd love to know that I helped you out. If you knew all of these, that's great too. Hopefully just reiterated the stuff you knew. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. I'll catch you all later. See ya.